So will the funeral. He wants to forget. Freddie never thought that a funeral could leave such an emptiness in his soul. When his grandmother passed away, everything seemed to freeze. The clocks in her house stopped. The photographs on the walls stared with empty eyes, and the air felt heavy, as if the house itself knew she was no longer there. She was the only person who truly cared for him. His parents were cold, distant, and his grandmother was his only salvation. But now she was gone. The funeral that wasn't like it should have been. On the day of the funeral, light rain fell, and it seemed right. The mud clung to his boots as though the very earth didn't want to let her go. The cemetery was too quiet. Not the usual sorrowful silence, but a heavy, suffocating one. As if the air itself didn't want to move, as if the world was holding its breath. When the coffin was lowered into the ground, Freddie felt something strange. As if she didn't want to leave. That feeling wouldn't leave him. As if his grandmother didn't just pass away. As if she was taken. He stood there, watching shovel after shovel of dirt thrown into the grave, feeling a growing sense of fear. Something wasn't right. His hands were cold as ice. And then he heard a knock, a dull, distant sound from beneath the ground. Knock. Freddie froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered to his brother standing next to him. His brother just gave him a puzzled look, clearly not understanding what he was talking about. A moment between life and death. It was a muffled, hollow sound, not like falling dirt. 3 knocks, dull, heavy. Freddie paled, but no one else heard anything. She didn't want to leave. When it was over, he stood before the grave and couldn't bring himself to leave. Something was pulling him back, as if his grandmother was still here. As if he could, but no, she's dead. The anxiety that won't go away. Weeks passed, but with each passing day he forgot her voice. It terrified him. He listened to old recordings, watched videos, but he felt like something was slipping away, as if his grandmother didn't just die, as if someone was erasing her from his memory. And then the phone rang. Her number on the screen. Something inside him snapped. She's dead, but she's calling. The first call from her number. The day was just like any other. Freddie spent it the same way he had spent the last few weeks, alone in his quiet, empty apartment, with the heavy weight of an unending melancholy pressing on his chest. He tried to get back to normal life, but something wouldn't let him go. The memory of the funeral hadn't faded, and even after all this time, that unsettling feeling remained. Too quiet of an evening. That evening, the apartment felt oppressively silent. The silence that felt unnatural, as though the air was thicker than usual, as if the walls had gotten closer. He sat on the couch, scrolling through something on his phone, when the phone suddenly rang. Her number on the screen. Freddie felt his heart stop. It was just a regular call. The screen lit up, the vibration cutting through the stillness of the room. But this number shouldn't be calling him. Grandma, she's dead. But her name appeared on the screen. Shock, fear, and horror. Freddie couldn't breathe. Was this a prank? A system error? But the number was hers, the very same one still saved in his contacts. Answer the phone. Or not. His hands were sweaty, trembling. His fingers hovered over the screen. What would happen if he answered? The call didn't stop, only the dull vibration in the quiet room. He pressed answer. Silence. No voice, no greeting. Only a whisper. No, not quite a whisper. Hissing. As if someone was trying to speak, but the sound was distorted, as if something was breaking between worlds. Unnatural. Dull sounds. Muted knocks, rustling, distant noise. Like something was trying to reach him through the darkness. Like something was preventing him from hearing the words. Freddie clenched the phone harder. Hello? The connection was cut off. The number disappeared. It wasn't in the call history. Freddie froze. He couldn't breathe. Had the phone really rung? But the cold touch of the screen still lingered in his palm. It was real. His grandmother had called him. But why? Unable to call back, Freddie sat motionless, gripping his phone with a dead man's grasp, as if the device was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. It wasn't a dream. He had seen the number. He had heard that strange, barely perceptible whisper. But the connection had been cut off, and now the silence in the apartment felt even more suffocating. Call back. Freddie swallowed. He didn't want to do it. But his mind desperately searched for a logical explanation. A technical malfunction. Someone playing a prank. He opened the call history. Empty. The number wasn't there. It wasn't in the call log. But it had rung. This is impossible. Freddie shook his head, as if trying to rid himself of the overwhelming sensation of complete illogicality. But the number was still in his contacts. He found it in the list. Grandmother. Just like before, as if nothing had happened. Call back? His fingers hovered over the screen. He took a deep breath and pressed dial. Dull beeps. 1, 2, 3. The subscriber is unavailable. The voice of the answering machine blasted in his ears too loudly, like an explosion in the silence. A chill ran down his spine. What did he expect to hear? That she would pick up? He started to feel nauseous from the terror. It wasn't a glitch, but he couldn't bring himself to believe any other explanation. Trying to convince himself it was just a mistake, he took a deep breath and ran his hand over his face, trying to bring himself back to reality. Nonsense, it's just a connection glitch, or something else. But he didn't believe it. He felt the coldness inside him that wouldn't go away. Decides to forget about it. He threw the phone on the table. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. He stood up, turned on the TV, but the background noise couldn't drown out his thoughts. He felt that something had already changed. But what exactly? Something had started, and it's not over yet. The second call. A warning. Late at night. The apartment was quiet. The silence of the night was oppressive. Freddie slept, but restlessly. Everything in his mind was tangled. Fragments of memories, strange visions, a sense of something near, but unclear. And then a call rang. The same number. Grandma. Freddie jolted awake, not immediately understanding where he was. The phone vibrated on the nightstand, casting a faint, bluish light across the room. He struggled to focus his vision. On the screen, incoming call. Grandma. The sense of reality shattered into pieces. It can't be. His body froze as if paralyzed by fear. Everything inside screamed, "Don't answer!" But his hand moved on its own and pressed, "Answer." Silence. Just breathing. No, not breathing. Hissing, as if someone was hoarsely, intermittently inhaling. A voice, female, weak, but wrong, as if something was trying to speak through a distorted recording. Save yourself. The connection was cut off. Freddie sat up in bed, his heart pounding wildly. He stared into the darkness, listening to the silence. Everything seemed the same, but he felt that something had changed. The room was not the same as before. As if someone was in it, as if someone was watching. But who? And most importantly, what is he being saved from? Was it a dream? A slow awakening in a changed world. Freddie woke up with a heaviness in his head. It felt like he had just woken from a nightmare he couldn't remember. His eyelids were heavy, and his muscles felt like they were made of lead. It took him a moment to realize where he was, his blurred gaze drifting around the room. Everything was in its place. The table, the armchair, the half-open wardrobe, the mirror across from the bed. But something was wrong. What exactly? A fog in his memory. He sat up on the bed and rubbed his temples. His head throbbed, thoughts tangled. And then, a flash of memory. The night call. The voice. Save yourself. A sharp chill ran down his spine. He shook his head. Nonsense. It must have been a dream. It had to be. Was it real? Freddie reached for his phone, opening the call log, but there was nothing there. No incoming calls from Grandma. No trace. He tensed up, but he had heard it. The voice. Hoarse. Wrong. That voice. Maybe it was just a dream? His body remembered the fear. But was it real? Logic versus instinct. His mind screamed, this was just a dream caused by stress, but deep inside something was telling him otherwise. You heard it. You remember it. It was real. Freddie shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away. He had to forget it. It was just a coincidence, just a dream. But why did his reflection in the mirror blink a second too late? Freddie froze. His head still hadn't fully woken up. Everything was blurry, thoughts were tangled, but the mirror. It had always been there, across from the bed. A familiar object. But something was off about it today. He blinked. The reflection lingered for a fraction of a second, as if it was catching up to him. A shiver ran down his spine. The sense of wrongness grew stronger. He abruptly stood up from the bed and moved closer. His palm touched the glass. Cold. Everything was fine. It was just him. He took a deep breath. But if it was a dream, why does it feel like he's not alone in the room? Why does his stomach tighten, as though someone is standing right behind him? Why does the silence feel so loud? The phone. Freddie grabbed it again, frantically scrolling through the call log. It's not there. But he knows it happened. Something is breaking in reality. He doesn't remember falling asleep. He doesn't remember how late it was when the call came, but he remembers the words. Save yourself. Save himself. From what? Deep inside, there's a feeling that Grandma said that for a reason. It was a warning. But a warning about what? A burst of panic. He looked back at the mirror. Now the reflection looked normal. But why doesn't he feel safe here anymore? Why does the room feel foreign? He exhaled heavily. Just stress, just a dream, just a silly fear. But if it was just a dream, why does the mirror not reflect his room? Third warning. She calls his name. A day that didn't start the way it should. Freddie tried to move on with his life, to ignore the strange calls, the unsettling thoughts, the mirrors that didn't always behave the way they should. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Everything seemed normal. But not quite. The apartment was the same, but it felt emptier. Shadows cast strange angles. The noise outside sounded muffled, quieter than usual. The call he had been waiting for. When the phone rang again, it shouldn't have surprised him, but it still made him jump, his heart tightening in his chest. The number. The same. Grandma. His skin crawled. Answer or not? Everything inside him screamed, don't answer. But he couldn't ignore it. Her number had been blocked after her death, but it kept calling. He pressed answer. This time there was no silence. A voice. A woman's voice, weak but louder than before. But distorted? It sounded as if someone was speaking through an old radio, as if the voice was cutting through a layer of time. Freddie. His heart skipped a beat. She knows his name. This was no longer just static. She is calling him. She is real. Don't stay there. His fingers gripped the phone so hard that his knuckles turned white. What? Where? There. What does she mean? The connection was cut off. Freddie was left in complete silence, his heart pounding in his chest. She wants to save him. But from what? What is holding him here? What exactly is wrong here? First, unexplainable events. The house that no longer feels like home. Freddie stood in the living room, still gripping the phone tightly. Don't stay there. But where? There. He could feel that his life had slowly shifted, veering into something wrong. It was as though reality had tilted just a little, like a painting hanging on the wall at the wrong angle. And then it started. The light acting strange. At first he thought it was just a coincidence. Flickering light bulbs, electrical issues. But these weren't your typical glitches. The light above him flared brighter than usual. Freddie instinctively squinted at the sharp brightness. When he opened his eyes for a second, it felt like the whole room darkened, as if for a moment he was surrounded by absolute darkness. But only for a moment. Then everything returned to normal. Freddie swallowed hard. That was not normal, but it was only the beginning. Rustling sounds in the night. At night, the house felt different, colder, stranger. But the most unsettling part, was the sounds. Freddie woke up to a creaking sound. It wasn't loud, but it was unnervingly clear in the stillness of the night, as though someone was slowly opening a door. But he was alone. He held his breath, listening. Footsteps, slow, cautious, as though someone walked down the hallway. But there was no one else in the house. Someone is here. Someone is standing in the dark and watching him. Things moving on their own. The next morning he found his mug on the floor. He hadn't dropped it, but it was right in the middle of the room. It was as if someone had placed it there on purpose. But who? He was alone, wasn't he? But the scariest thing happened that evening. He sat on the couch and heard a rustling sound. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Freddie froze. He looked around. The book that had been sitting on the shelf fell by itself. He saw it with his own eyes. No one had touched it, but it fell. Silence. The feeling that someone was standing nearby was almost physical. His heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed like he couldn't hear anything else. And then he remembered. Don't stay there. What if this warning wasn't about the future, but about the present? What if he wasn't alone in this house anymore? The house became different. Freddie began noticing changes that couldn't be explained by fatigue or stress. Something moved, but he didn't do it. Something made a sound, but he was alone. He couldn't remember when he started looking over his shoulder more often than usual, but he no longer felt at home in his own house. It wasn't just nearby, it was moving things. It was trying to make him notice. The feeling of being watched. His body knew it before his mind did. It tensed when he was in silence. It reacted to empty rooms as if they were not empty. The scariest night. When evening came, he decided to make sure he was just overthinking everything. He checked the windows, closed. He checked the front door, locked. He turned off the lights and went to bed. But as soon as he closed his eyes... Footsteps. They weren't outside the window, not in the hallway, in the room, right here. Step. Pause, step. Pause. Freddie stopped breathing. This couldn't be real, but he heard it. It was here. He slowly reached for his phone. The screen lit up. New incoming call. Grandmother's number. He couldn't breathe. The silence seemed to drag on. What if he answered it and heard that it was already here? Where is there? Hasn't he been there already? The funeral photo changed the night you can't sleep. Freddie couldn't sleep after the call. He had heard footsteps. He felt that someone was here, but there was no one in the room. Or could he just not see it? What if he's not looking in the right direction? What if IT is already close? Thoughts lead him back. He tried to think logically. Night calls, that's one thing. Footsteps, that's another. But what if his grandmother was trying to warn him? But warn him about what? The funeral. Why did he feel like something wasn't right? Why had he almost forgotten her face? Freddie jumped out of bed and grabbed his phone. In the photo gallery there were pictures from the funeral. He didn't like to look at them, but now he had to look at them. The photo that changed. He slowly flipped through the photo album and froze. One of the photos, it wasn't the same. When he had looked at it before, his grandmother was looking away. She wasn't looking at the camera, but now her eyes were looking directly at him. A cold terror gripped his body. How is this possible? He knew this wasn't the same photo, but he hadn't changed it. Who did this? Fear that cannot be explained. Freddie tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, but he remembered at the funeral she was looking away. Why is she now looking straight into the camera? It's as if she knows he's looking at her. It's as if she wants to say something to him, as if she is still here. He felt that he was not alone in the room. Something was nearby. Something was watching him. In that moment, his phone vibrated. New call. Grandmother's number. Freddie clamped his mouth with his hand to stop himself from screaming. He didn't want to answer, but if he doesn't answer, someone else might answer instead of him. The fourth call. Grandma speaks longer. The phone kept vibrating. Grandmother's number. Freddie froze. He didn't want to answer. But if he didn't answer, what if it would be worse? What if she couldn't reach him anymore? What if this was his last chance to learn the truth? He took a deep breath and hit answer. Silence, but not complete silence. This time, somebody was breathing into the phone, not loudly, but he heard it, as if someone was trying to speak but couldn't. Then, a creak, like an old chair slowly sliding on the floor, and then a voice, but this time it was closer, not like before when it was weak, barely discernible. This voice sounded as though she was speaking directly into his ear, but unnatural, distorted, like something was preventing her from speaking, like she was speaking through something. "Freddie," he gasped. It was her, but not entirely. It was as if the voice was breaking through something dark, viscous, as if someone was standing behind her, as if she wasn't alone. "They found you." The voice was intermittent, like the connection was breaking, but not because of the phone. It felt like something was trying to stop her. "Get out of the house." Freddie tensed up. What did she say? But the call was cut off again, as if someone had abruptly pulled the receiver away, as if something didn't want him to hear this. Silence. But this time the silence felt different, thick, heavy, as if the air in the room had changed. Freddie slowly lowered the phone. His hands were shaking. He felt like he wasn't alone. Something had changed. Something in the house was no longer just emptiness. IT was here, and it already knew that he had understood. A shadow. Outside the window. A night that feels too quiet. Freddie didn't want to stay at home. His grandmother's words wouldn't leave his mind. Get out of the house. But where to go? It was already late. Outside, deep into the night. He decided to stay until morning. Just wait it out. Just make sure everything was fine, but nothing was fine. Movement outside the window. He sat in the living room, the phone with his grandmother's number still in his hands. Then he felt it. Movement, not inside the house, but outside the window. Freddie jerked his head up. Darkness. The street was empty. Only a few distant streetlights illuminated the yard, and it was empty. Almost empty. Because he saw it. A tall figure in the darkness. A person, number 2 tall, too thin, unnaturally stretched. The figure stood directly across from the house, and it was watching. It didn't move, but he could feel its gaze. It was looking at him. Freddie froze. This is impossible. It must be a trick of the light. But he saw it. He knew it was real. The light flickers. The lamp in the room suddenly flickered. Freddie jumped. The figure outside the window moved. It didn't step. It just changed position, as if it shifted for a fraction of a second, as if reality skipped a frame, as if something had erased the moment of its movement. The light flickered again. Freddie blinked with it. The figure was gone, but he knew. It was still here. Only now he didn't know where. It was close. Somewhere in the darkness. The house that won't let go. Freddie couldn't breathe. The figure had vanished, but it didn't bring any relief. Now he didn't know where it was. It could be anywhere. In the darkness outside the window, in the corner of the room, behind him. But he felt it. It hadn't left. He decided to run. His grandmother had warned him. Get out of the house. He wasn't going to wait any longer. Freddie sprang to his feet and ran toward the front door. His hand landed on the lock. He yanked it down hard. But the door didn't open. The lock wasn't engaged. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if something else was holding it. As if the walls themselves didn't want to let him out. He pulled harder. Useless. The house wouldn't let him go. The windows no longer showed the street. He rushed to the window to break it, but he didn't see the street. He didn't see the trees. He didn't see the street lights. The window reflected something else. Black, writhing, shadows moving. But it wasn't a reflection of the room. He saw what was on the other side, not where the street should be. but where there should be nothing. Somewhere in the darkness, somewhere beyond this world, somewhere he shouldn't have been looking. The last call from Grandma. The phone vibrated. Freddie flinched. Grandmother's number. He squeezed the phone in his hands. He knew this call would be the last. But if he didn't answer, he would stay here forever. He would never leave this house. He pressed answer. Her voice was quieter than before. It sounded like she was speaking from far away, but now he could hear her clearly. Turn the mirror in the hallway. The call ended. Freddie slowly turned his head. The mirror in the hallway. It had always been there, but he had never thought about it until now. And now. He knew that something was in it. They are already here? Freddie slowly approaches the mirror. He didn't know what would happen next, but he had no choice. Grandma told him to turn it, and he would. The mirror hides the truth. The room was empty, just him. But in the reflection, something was behind him. It didn't move, but he knew it was breathing. He didn't need to see it. He already felt it. A light chill along his neck, the heaviness in the air, the smell of dampness and decay. Silence that is never empty. He opened his mouth to scream, but he couldn't. Something clamped his throat. Not a hand, not a strap, but the air, as if the darkness itself had wrapped around his neck, preventing him from breathing. The entity advances. It moved. Freddie wanted to run, but his legs felt as if they were rooted to the floor. The mirror no longer showed him. It only showed this. The creature was tall, taller than a human, too thin. Its skin seemed stretched over fragile bones. And its hands. It stretched its hands toward him. Long, unnatural, slithering like snakes. But the scariest part, it didn't move right. Every movement was false. As if it existed outside time. As if it were a frame from someone else's dream. It shouldn't exist, but it was here. It almost touched him. His throat was still squeezed by an invisible force. Freddie couldn't scream. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the mirror. He was being limited by reality itself. It had always been this way, and Grandma knew this. It extended its hand even closer. And then, the phone rang. Grandma's number. The last call. Grandma saves him. But Freddie felt the cold fingers of the entity reaching for his throat. The world was compressing. The air no longer existed. He was trapped. All he could do was stare at the mirror. And in the mirror, Grandma. Grandma whispers a spell. She didn't look like she did at the funeral. Alive, real, but frightened. Her lips moved, but he couldn't hear the words. A whisper, just a whisper. He felt her voice penetrate the walls, into the mirror, into time itself. And then the room began to crumble. Cracks appeared on the walls. The floor beneath him groaned. The entity recoiled, its figure writhing in the mirror. The world was changing. Freddie felt himself falling. Everything disappeared. Darkness. Endless darkness. The finale. He woke up, his room. He was here. He was alive, but the phone rang. He slowly turned his head. The screen was glowing. Grandma's number. Trembling fingers pressed answer. Silence. And then the voice, but it wasn't Grandma's. Hoarse, deep, foreign. Now it's your turn. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new creepy tales. Share your thoughts in the comments. We value your opinion. Bye for now. See you in the next video.